Hello everyone, welcome to another video. So recently I've had a bunch of questions about foundations. Some viewers have left me comments asking, how do I know how to pick a foundation, or what method, like how do I know whether to use a brush or a sponge? So I thought, you know what, the easiest way is to just create a video about it, and hopefully that'll address some of the questions that you may have. And I am going to start right at the very beginning. I think that is the best way to start a process, and it may seem very elementary to everybody, but I just want to make sure that I'm covering all the bases right from A to Z. So we're just going to jump in. So step one. One of the things that I find is the most important, figuring out what skin type you have, because that will determine what foundation you're going to use. If you're someone like me, which I have a dry, mature skin, I need a product that is going to be a little bit more hydrating, a little bit more luminous, because my skin can definitely look not hydrated, not luminous. So I need a product that's going to give me those. Now, if you're somebody that has more oily skin, then you're going to want a product that is a little bit more mattifying, long-lasting. And if you're somebody with sensitive skin, then you're going to want a product that's more hyperallergenic, because you don't want to be increasing any breakouts. And then once you've established what type of skin you have, then I think it's important to figure out what undertone you have, because your foundation needs to match your undertone. One of the simplest things that I have done in the past, and it's usually a rule of thumb, is looking at the veins that are on your wrist. So if you're somebody that has more green veins, then you are most likely of a warm undertone. And if you're someone like me where I have more bluey purpley veins, then that is usually a cool undertone. But that will always be your indication of what kind of foundation to go with. That's why it's sometimes hard to order foundations online. I prefer, like 100% prefer, to shop in store if I can, because sometimes foundations can look really different on the skin. I always say to test it kind of on around your neck area here if you can. And a lot of my foundations surprisingly end up being neutral. So if you can, that's one of my suggestions, is always try and go in store. So one of the next steps I think is important is starting with a clean face. Make sure that your face is washed. Use whatever cleanser you prefer. I have a very simple skincare routine. I don't have a complicated one at all. What I usually do is in the morning, I wash my face with my cleanser. I apply a serum, my moisturizer, and a sunscreen. And depending on what kind of morning I'm having, I try and combine, because there's a lot out there right now that have a sunscreen and a primer mixed in. So those are the best products, especially for my busy mornings. But for this demonstration, I am going to use a separate primer. One of the things I also recommend is exfoliating. I usually exfoliate my skin about 2 to 3 times a week, usually not any more than that because of my dry skin. Otherwise, you're actually doing a little bit more damage, in my opinion, because I think you're stripping those essential oils and any sort of hydration from your face. But I think exfoliating is very important, trying to get all that dead skin off your face. And that really does help your makeup apply way better. So once you're done cleansing, exfoliating, apply your skincare products, whatever those are. And then as my final step, like I mentioned, I go in with primer. Now this is always up for debate. Some people feel that they don't need a primer, and that's fine. Everybody has to do what you're comfortable with. But for my dry, mature skin, I think it's really important that I have a primer, and it helps the makeup last longer. And it almost creates like a little bit of a barrier on some of my fine lines that I have. It just kind of smooths them out. Now I'll show you a few of my favorites. There's a couple of drugstore ones and then also a Sephora brand. And it also depends on what it is that you're looking for in your primer. If you just want something to blur, I have the Maybelline Master Prime. This is like a lotion formula. So that one's really easy to blend in, and it does do a nice job of blurring the pores. Then if you have more oily skin, or if you want like a really grippy primer, e.l.f. has a great one. It's the Power Grip Primer. The pink one, there's a pink one and a green one. I like the pink one actually because it has a little bit of niacinamide in it. Now this one really does help your makeup stay on. This is great for the summertime if you don't want your makeup slipping around, like your foundation. But right now, like I can feel it right now, like it gets like a little bit sticky. And I always let the primer sit on my skin for about a minute or so. And then the one I'm going to use today is by Fenty Beauty. This is her hydrating primer. And that's another option if you have dry skin. I think a hydrating one is perfect. So all I usually do is take about that much, run it between my fingers, and I like to apply it very strategically in the areas where I have a lot of my wrinkles, like on my forehead. I have a lot of forehead wrinkles. Down around by my mouth area, I have a lot of wrinkling in here and my smile lines. And then I usually just give it a little bit of a tap. But I think for mature skin, it's a great idea to use primer. Like I said, it just really helps give that your dry skin, if you have that, just an extra boost of hydration. I find a hydrating primer and primers in general just really smooth out the skin. And in my opinion, I think it really does help the foundation look flawless. So now I'll dive into a little bit more about actual formulations of foundations and how I know whether to use a sponge or a brush. And that really does depend on the type of foundation that I'm using. And don't forget your fingers as well. So if I want to, say for instance, use my fingers that day, I'm going to use more of I'm going to say a skincare type of formula. So two of my go-tos for that method are the Wet n Wild, the Tinted Hydrator, or the CoverGirl, the Simply Aegis, the Skin Perfecting Essence. So these two products, I prefer just to use my fingers. Now, one thing to note, when you are using your fingers, use less product than you think that you'll need. And the only reason I say that is because normally like with a brush or a sponge, some of the product is going to be absorbed into that tool, right? But with your fingers, that's not going to happen. So I always say start off with less product and you can always apply more. These products are more creamy and they just blend really well into the skin. So that's why these ones I will use my fingers, and then I'll usually go in with a sponge and just make sure that there's no streaking or anything like that. Now for products that I'm going to apply with a brush, those ones are more of a lighter formula. By lighter, I mean like a bit more of a runnier formula. So one of my go-to ones is by House Labs. This is like one of my holy grail foundations. I absolutely love this foundation, but you'll see it is more of a runnier base. So right off the bat, you can see that it's not thick at all. And these are the ones that I prefer to use a brush. They blend out so beautifully on the skin. So as I'm blending, I find with the brush, you don't have to use as much product because the coverage is just a little bit better. Whereas with a sponge, then it just shears out the product a little bit better, but I'll get into that in a minute. So what I do is I take the product that I have on my hand, and that's the one I'm going to use today. I haven't used it in a long time, so I thought, what the heck. So I usually will put product in the center of my face. I will blend it out that way. One of the things I always say, and I've said this in tons of videos, is depending on whatever the product is, whether it's foundation, bronzer, blush, doesn't matter. I always think it's better to start off light and then build it up or add more product if you need to, because it's so much harder to remove product. If you go in and you put a whole bunch of stuff on your face, whole bunch of foundation, and then as you're blending it out, it just starts looking cakey and it's just too much. It's so much harder to remove other than going and washing your face. Then when you start off light and then you can just kind of build it up. So just a recommendation. This, I forgot to say, this is my BK Beauty. This is the 106 foundation brush. This is a fabulous, fabulous foundation brush. One of my favorites. But you don't, the drugstore has some great ones as well. This is a Real Techniques 200, but Real Techniques, they have some fantastic brushes. So you don't always have to go and spend a fortune on brushes. The drugstore has some good ones. Elf has some great brushes. NYX. And Real Techniques is just one of those great brands that has some really nice brushes. Now, one of the things you'll see me always doing when I apply the products with my brush is I stipple the product in. And also keep in mind, you don't have to put foundation all over your face. You can just apply it in the areas that you want. I've really gotten into the habit of doing that lately. Just kind of applying it where I think I just need the most coverage, usually where I have my hyperpigmentation. But that's one of the nice things about using a really light, hydrating foundation. I don't want anything I'm not a full coverage foundation person. I think that's just a recipe for disaster. They sink into all the fine lines. And don't forget to always, always, always take the foundation down your neck, because you don't want to have it appear like you have a mask on. One of the other things is, yes, look in the mirror and apply your product, but don't forget to also turn your head, make sure that everything is applied down your neck, by your chin. I'm just going to do one side of my face to show you what it looks like. And you saw, I didn't have very much on my hand at all, especially with mature skin, not dragging the foundation brush. I think when you do that, it just leaves a little bit more streaks, that sort of thing. I will always go in after the brush with a sponge. Another option, if you have oily skin, there's powder foundations out there that I think look really great on more oily skin. Or you're going to want to stick with more of a mattifying, which when you have dry skin, you do not want that. I think luminous and hydrating and radiant, I think those are the go-tos. Just come a little bit closer for you so you can see. So I did this half of my face. And again, didn't use a lot of product, but you can see how it gave just a really beautiful kind of finish. I'm not looking for anything heavy, cakey. I prefer a light, natural coverage. So it is quite a difference when you see them, just the one side done. And one of the other things I think to look for when you are looking for a foundation for dry, mature skin, so many of them come with SPF in them, which I never rely on my foundation as my sunscreen. You just can't apply enough for it to be sufficient. So many of them come with hyaluronic acid in them. Some of them come with vitamin C, vitamin E. So it's really important just trying to find a foundation that works for you. And one other thing that I recommend is sometimes a foundation looks a little bit different depending on the season. So I personally find for myself that in the summertime, I usually have to change a couple of my shades of foundation to a little bit more darker. Whereas in the winter time, when I'm not exposed as much to sun, then I usually switch back to, I'll call it my winter foundation, and it's usually a little bit lighter. Now, what I'm going to do on this side is use my sponge. So I've put about the same amount that I had with my brush. And you'll see, this is something I just remembered. One of the things you'll always see me doing is applying it to the back of my hand. And one of the reasons for that is I find that, and my hands are clean. I know some people may think it's unsanitary, but my hands are clean. Everything's clean before I start my makeup application. I find that this helps warm up the product. And that's another factor in how it applies to my face. It just looks so much smoother when it's warmed up. So just another little tip for you. Now, my favorite sponge is by Rephr. It is just so squishy. I know that a lot of go-tos are the Beauty Blender. I think this is actually better than the Beauty Blender. But again, you don't have to go and spend a bunch of money. I also have this one by e.l.f. That one's a great one. It's a little dirty right now. I have to wash that one. And then one thing I just picked up yesterday at the store, and it looks brand spanking new. I was just in there looking to pick up a few things, and the staff that works in the cosmetic department, she goes, "Oh, I'm in there lots," so she knows me, and she said, "Oh, have you seen the new sponge?" And I said, "I have not." And so she showed me there's a new sponge by Real Techniques. What's interesting about this is it says it absorbs 90% less makeup. So I haven't used it yet. I didn't want to try it today. I'm going to use it behind the scenes and see how I like it. But I thought that was great because one of the things about using a sponge, again, I'm repeating myself, but they absorb so much product. So not the most ideal thing, but I really do like the coverage that it gives. Now generally, I'm going to say generally, I use a sponge for more thicker formulas. So just let me get this blended in and I'll show you. There's a couple of formulas that I have that are a little bit more thicker. And that's why I like them, because it just shears it out a little bit better. But I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, but this is definitely, this side is more sheer than this side here. And you always just pounce it in. I also forgot to say, make sure your sponge is always wet. I've had actually quite a few people ask me, and it's just something I totally forget to say, to use a dampened sponge. But yes, always make sure your sponge is damp. Now, if you are like me and you do have some texture on your skin, or if you do have age spots, that sort of thing, sometimes the foundation just isn't enough. One of the things I'll do is go in with concealer. The one that I've just been using this on repeat lately. It's the one by Kofi. Oh, beautiful, beautiful concealer. And all I do is I just put it right where I have the dark spots, which is right in that area. And then either tap it in with your finger or use your sponge. And it just kind of helps diminish it a little bit. One thing you'll notice, and I've mentioned this in several videos, this is just my personal preference. I will never usually put foundation under my eyes. I leave that for my concealer. Now, if you are somebody that doesn't have a lot of darkness and foundation just works, that you can just put some foundation and it covers everything, that is awesome. You are very lucky. I, unfortunately, do not have that. So I leave that for just specifically for concealer, because I find the more product that I put like under my eye area, especially because that is a very dry area for me, it just ends up looking cakey and creases, gets all into my fine lines. So generally that is just reserved for concealer. But at the end of the day, everybody has to do you and do what's comfortable for yourself. And just like the foundation, I let that sit on my skin for just a few seconds and warm it up. And I find it does blend in better. And I usually tap that in as well. Everything's tapping. You don't usually see me like rubbing or brushing stuff on. Tapping into the skin, especially our mature skin, I think is a way better application method. But I'm not sure, again, I'm not sure if the camera's going to pick it up. Just showing how the different sides, at least I can see it in the mirror here. This one does look a little bit more sheared out. And this one just has a little bit more coverage to it with the brush side. Now, a couple of foundations that I prefer to use strictly as a sponge. Remember I was saying earlier that more thicker formulas usually use a sponge and it just shears it out a little bit better. So two of my go-tos are this is the L'Oreal one, the Nude Serum. You can see how thick of a formula it is. This one just does not budge anywhere. I need another bottle of it. Really, really thick. And then my other go-to one is it's a beautiful foundation. It's by Fenty. It's the Soft Lit Foundation. You can see there too how it's not even budging. It's just a little bit of a thicker formula. So with those type of formulas, that's when I prefer to use a sponge. They shear out a little bit better, but you're getting the benefit of I'm not going to say full coverage foundation, but just a little bit of a thicker formula. Both of these are beautiful on mature skin. I highly recommend both of them. This one in particular, I talk lots about this one on my channel. This one has the 1% hyaluronic acid in it, perfect for mature skin. And this one, the Fenty, is just a gorgeous lightweight formula. Well, you can see even now with this House Labs one, it's not settling into my fine lines here. It just looks really nice. And this is how it'll look for the rest of the day. I'm just going to pop off camera, quickly do the rest of my makeup, and I'll be back in a second because I do have one final step for you. All right, so hopefully you can see how lovely the foundation looks on both sides. I didn't put a lot of makeup on today because I wanted the focus to be on the actual foundation methods. Now, as a last step, one of the things I always get asked about is, should I apply powder or not? And quite honestly, I think that is just really personal preference. Everybody has different skin needs. What I may like on my skin, somebody else may not like that. I personally just like a beautiful, dewy, kind of glowy look. I think it just really helps enhance my skin so it doesn't look so dry. So I'm sure a lot of you can already guess that my go-to what I usually say is I apply powder very, very strategically, and I don't apply a lot. So I'll show you two of my go-to powders that I use. I generally don't use like a loose powder. Again, different trains of thought, whether some people like it, some people don't. I personally just use more of like a compact type of pressed powder, but I love this one because feels like a real buttery kind of formula. And then my other one that I really enjoy too is by Kosas. One of the things that I like about the Kosas one is it doesn't ever leave your face shiny. It's very buttery smooth, and it honestly feels like you have like nothing on your face. So this one I like using under my eyes, but I'll show you on either eye. So I just get usually a big fluffy brush, and I also have my other favorite, which is the BK Beauty. This is a dual-sided brush. So on this side here, I'll just use the big fluffy brush. Tiny bit of that. So there's not a lot on my brush right now. And like I mentioned, like I actually like how my face looks a little bit dewy right now. It has, you can see that concealer under my eye looks beautiful, very hydrating concealer. But for the essence of this video, I'll just show you how it'll help get rid of some of that shininess under there. And I'm just using little tapping motions. But if you're somebody that has more oily skin, yes, definitely you probably want to use a powder to set your makeup. So you can see how it's totally taken away that shine. Now throughout the day, I will have a little bit of natural oil peek through, but for the most part, it'll pretty much stay like this. So this was the Kosas side. You can see how it's giving a natural look, but it's not shiny at all. And then what I'll do on this side is I'll use the Physicians Formula one, and I will use my regular brush that I have, and I just take just a tiny bit, so there's not a lot on my brush, and this one I will gently pat it under my eye, but neither one of these leave my under eyes looking all dry and wrinkly or anything like that. Like it doesn't accentuate my wrinkles at all. So that's why these two are usually my go-tos. So this side has still a little bit of luminosity because I didn't pat it in. It's just that really light, fluffy brush. And then this side, it did cover it a little bit better, but the texture, this texture of the Physicians Formula is such a beautiful formula. And this will stay like this now for the rest of the day. If you want to, definitely take some into your smile lines if you want to set that. I usually don't, but that's the extent of the powder that I use. And I think it just looks really fresh and natural looking. So drop me a comment down below and let me know whether you found this video helpful. I hope you did. I have had so many viewers lately, new subscribers to me, and they mentioned that they're actually just getting back into wearing makeup again. So I always want to try and help where I can and just share my knowledge that I have. I'm not a professional makeup artist by any means. This is self-taught over many, many, many years and reading. I read so much about, especially mature skin, how we just have to do things a little bit differently. So just a little bit of a recap. Always keep in mind that everything that I talk about is always personal preference. Everybody has to do what you feel comfortable with. And by all means, skip steps here and there if that is just not your jam. Make sure to pick the foundation that is suitable for your skin type and your undertone. Make sure you're starting your foundation application with a clean canvas. Decide what method works for you, whether that's your fingers, a sponge, a brush. I know sometimes there's just dedicated camps. Some people are dedicated sponge, brush, fingers, but again, you do you. Makeup is supposed to be fun. It's a fun experience, I think. I just love applying makeup and playing with makeup. So do whatever brings joy to you. I always say blend, blend, blend. Make sure that that foundation is blended in really well. And always start out small, like little light applications. And then if you always want to build up a little bit more, a little bit at a time. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching. If you're new here, I hope you consider subscribing to my channel. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Everything that I talked about today and the products that I use will be linked and listed down in the description box. And I thank you very much if you ever do use any of my links. I do earn a little small commission from any sales from that. So thank you so much for helping to support my channel. And as always, I hope everybody has a great week and a great life. And I'll see you all very soon in my next video. Bye.